by anything. And the United Nations said, according to Secretary General Antonio Guterres, condemned Russia's actions, telling Putin to bring your troops back to Russia. In the name of humanity, do not allow a war to start in Europe, which could be the worst war since the beginning of the century, with consequences not only devastating for Ukraine, not only tragic for the Russian Federation, but with an impact cannot even foresee. The United Kingdom Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he was shocked by the terrible events in Ukraine and has spoken to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to discuss the next steps. European Union says the bloc will hold Moscow accountable for the unjustified attack on Ukraine. The chief of the EU's Executive Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, said, "In these dark hours, our thoughts are with Ukraine and the innocent women, men and children as they face this unprovoked attack and fear for their lives," she said on Twitter. And NATO says the Atlantic Alliance Secretary General said Russia had chosen the path of aggression against a sovereign and independent country. Stoltenberg said in a statement, the attack puts at risk countless civilian lives, describing it as a grave breach of international law and a serious threat to Euro-Atlantic security. NATO ambassadors are to hold an emergency meeting on Thursday morning, European time, to discuss the attack. Other countries that condemned the act include Czech Republic, China, Poland, Australia, France, Spain, and Canada, amongst others. Still on the Russian-Ukraine crisis, Joe Biden, United States President, has promised support and assistance for Ukraine in a call with President Volodymyr Zelensky shortly after Russia launched an overnight invasion of the country. He condemned the unprovoked and unjustified attack by Russian military forces. In a statement, the U.S. president said Zelensky asked Washington to call on the leaders of the world to speak out clearly against Russian President Vladimir Putin's flagrant aggression. In an earlier statement released on Wednesday, Biden said he will meet with G7 counterparts on Thursday to plan out more severe actions against Russia, saying the U.S. and its allies will act in a united and decisive way and will be imposing severe sanctions on Russia. President Putin has chosen a premeditated war that will bring a catastrophic loss of life and human suffering, Biden said in the initial statement. Washington announced an initial package of Western sanctions against Russian oligarchs, financial institutions, and exports earlier this week. Yesterday, it further stepped up pressure on Putin by imposing sanctions on the firm building the $11 billion Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline and its corporate officers, a move Biden had waited for months. On Tuesday, Germany froze approvals for the pipeline, which has been built but was not yet in operation, amidst concerns it could allow Moscow to weaponize energy supplies to Europe. U.S. President also said Washington will coordinate with NATO allies to ensure a strong, united response that deters any aggression against the alliance. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin spoke with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and discussed the alliance's coordinated response to Russia's attack, the State Department said early on Thursday. Hong Kong has invoked emergency powers so that doctors and nurses from mainland China can join its efforts to fight what it said was a dire epidemic situation as the Omicron variant of the coronavirus sweeps across the densely populated territory. Authorities on Thursday morning reported 8,774 new cases, nearly all of them locally acquired. Hong Kong is now facing a very dire epidemic situation, which continues to deteriorate rapidly, the government said in explaining its need for the emergency powers. The outbreak is projected to continue to worsen exponentially and go beyond the epidemic control capacity of the territory's administration, meaning Hong Kong's healthcare system, manpower, anti-epidemic facilities and resources will soon be inadequate to handle the huge number of newly confirmed cases detected every day. There have been approximately 50,000 cases confirmed over the past 14 days, and China's President Xi Jinping has told Hong Kong to take all the required measures to suppress the outbreak. The region has made its already tight restrictions even tighter as it tries to stamp out its worst outbreak of COVID-19 since the virus first started in the central Chinese city of Wuhan 2 years ago. It is also set to commence compulsory testing of its 7.4 million people next month, part of the so-called dynamic zero COVID strategy that mimics mainland China's response to the virus. A group of mainland Chinese professionals are presently in Hong Kong to consult on the pandemic reaction and are supporting in the construction of emergency medical facilities to cope with the expected influx of patients. More story says the European Union sanctions Russia defense minister and military chief. Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu has been sanctioned by the European Union on the country's military chiefs and other people close to the Kremlin in reaction to the intensifying crisis in Ukraine. The 27-nation group says it is freezing assets and imposing visa bans on high-ranking officials that include not only the heads of Russian Army, Navy and Air Force, but President Vladimir Putin's chief of staff and the editor-in-chief of state-run English-language television channel RT, according to the EU's official journal. Western countries have reinforced sanctions on Russia since the country announced it was recognizing 2 breakaway regions of eastern Ukraine as independent and will send troops there, a move that was condemned continually in an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council on Monday night. That illegal act further undermines Ukraine's sovereignty and independence, and it's a severe breach of international law and international agreements, the EU said in announcing the latest sanctions, which were agreed to at a meeting in Paris on Tuesday. Flagging the plan alongside French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian, then EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell said the sanctions will hurt Russia and will hurt a lot. The European Union said those on the blacklist had been involved in military aggression against Ukraine, taking key political decisions or propaganda on the situation on behalf of the Kremlin. Now in Africa, former Guinea-Bissau Prime Minister Domingos Pereira stopped from leaving country. On Wednesday, former Guinea-Bissau Prime Minister Domingos Simões Pereira has been stopped from leaving the country due to a judicial review in an investigation into an attempted coup in 2021, the Bissau prosecutor's office said, according to reports. Pereira is a member of parliament and leader of the former ruling PAIGC party, which has dominated political life in Guinea-Bissau since independence in 1974, was President Umaru Sissoko Embalo's opponent in the runoff presidential election in January 2020, the results of which he is contesting. The Prosecutor General's office issued a statement evening announcing a measure of coercion against Mr. Pereira from Tuesday. The statement said this decision prevents him from leaving the country without the authorization of the public prosecutor. Pereira is officially accused, while he was prime minister, of having allowed the disbursement of $5 million to Guinea-Bissau businessmen to pay debts owed to local banks, according to official sources. He is accused of not having consulted the National Assembly before granting the disbursement. He is also cited in an alleged coup attempt against President Embalo on 12 April 2021, according to the official document. A meeting scheduled for Monday at the National Assembly to consider the request to lift immunity was not held due to a lack of quorum, notably because of the absence of PAIGC MPs, according to parliamentary sources. Out of 102 deputies in the National Assembly, the presidential majority has at least 53 deputies, thanks to an alliance with other parties. The PAIGC has 47 MPs. A small West African country with a population of about 2 million, Guinea-Bissau has a history of coups. Since its independence from Portugal in 1974, it has experienced a series of coups, military or not, successful or abortive, the last of which was failed on 1st February 2022. Moving ahead, ex-ruling party requests the release of Kabore from house arrest. On Wednesday, the party of the overthrown president of Burkina Faso, Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, said that it was concerned and asked the junta that took power to release him without delay or conditions 1 month after his arrest on 24th January in Ouagadougou. The People's Movement for Progress (MPP) invites the new authorities of Burkina Faso to release President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore without delay or conditions, wrote the party's president Alassane Bala Sakandé in a public statement on the national situation. A statement released Wednesday showed that his party is worried and questioned the reasons for keeping Mr. Kabore under house arrest, who has been moved several times with increasingly harsh conditions of detention. The ex-ruling party also called on the head of the junta, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, to keep the commitment he has made to ensure that the fundamental rights of every citizen are respected. The release of the overthrown president has also been demanded by the United Nations, the African Union, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Now, former Guinean minister jailed over corruption charges. A special prosecutor's office announced on Tuesday evening former Guinean minister Ismail Diop has been imprisoned and another placed under judicial supervision in Conakry for embezzlement of public funds and corruption. The former budget minister under Alpha Condé, 2010 to 2020, Ismail Diop, was placed under warrant in a Conakry prison, and the former Minister of State and Special Advisor to the Presidency during this period, Thibaut Camara, placed under judicial supervision, said a statement from the prosecutor's office of the Court of Repression of Economic and Financial Offences, CREEF. On Tuesday, Mr. Diop and Mr. Camara appeared before the investigating chamber of the CREEF and are prosecuted for embezzlement of public funds, money laundering, corruption, and complicity, said in the statement signed by its special prosecutor Ali Toure. The CREEF, created by the military who overthrew President Condé on September 5th. Also, the CREEF charged and placed under arrest on Wednesday Ms. Evelyn Fola Mansara, former Administrative and Financial Director of the Ministry of Technical Education and Vocational Training. A judicial investigation was also opened against Ms. Zainab Dream, known as Zainab Nebaya, who headed this ministerial department under Mr. Condé. The charges against those 4 former officials were not specified by the CREEF. The military, which took power by force in Guinea, has made the fight against corruption reputed to be the endemic, one of its major battles. The head of the junta, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, who became president, guaranteed that there will be no witch hunt, but that justice will be the country's compass. The junta has proceeded to evict numerous executives from state services. Finally, Burkinabe military appointed panel backs 30-month transition. A board appointed by Burkina Faso's military coup leaders to draft a transition to democracy has reportedly recommended a 30-month delay until elections. On Wednesday, the report was submitted by panel chair Mariam Ouattara to coup leader Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba at a ceremony in the capital, Ouagadougou. The 15-person panel, which includes military officers and technocrats, was established 2 weeks ago by Damiba, who removed President Roch Kabore on January 24th. It was saddled with setting the framework for a political transition and a return to a new constitutional order. While specifics of the report were not instantly revealed, reports say the panel recommended a 30-month transitional period to elections. The recommendation will match with the military's plan to rule for approximately 2 years before organizing elections, according to reports. The board also reportedly planned a transitional government in the West African country of up to 20 ministers and a transitional parliament of 51 members. Ouattara indicated that the report was the result of a consensus within the commission. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, which suspended Burkina Faso from its governing bodies following the coup, has asked the military authorities to quickly propose a timetable for the restoration of constitutional order. 3 weeks after the coup, Damiba was inaugurated as Burkina Faso's president on February 16th. That's you up to date with international news stories. But before I go, a quick recap of major stories. Airspace closed in Ukraine, Western Russia as Putin orders attack. Zelensky address says the war is a big disaster. Russia attack on Ukraine, the world reacts. Biden promised support in call with Zelensky, and Hong Kong turns to emergency powers for China's support in COVID rise. With this, from all of us at Equa Television, good night.